So, can everybody see the first slide? Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're hit to talk about proposed funding, and the backdrop to this was, and it feels a long time ago, back in March 2020.
You've muted.
You've muted yourself, Robin.
Oh, have I? Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah,
Apologies
you're back.
for that. I'm good. Right. And so background, tail end of last year's consultation, Devon County Council announced they were going to undertake an exercise called Valuing Care. And the intent behind that exercise was to collect cost information to inform Devon County Council on relevant costs and potential for future fee models and costs. So that was started. Various people did participate in that exercise. And so on the 10th of February, 2025, the fee consultation got underway. You should have either received an email or been able to access the documentation through the provider engagement network. If anybody hasn't been able to access any of that information, then please just message us and we can facilitate that. And this consultation is out for 6 weeks and requests responses before midnight on the 23rd of March. So that's the timescales, and there's a lot involved in the consultation, and so we thought we would try and organize this call as quickly as possible to enable people to input and comment, and in particular some of the issues that we need to cover. The new model that's being proposed, although that won't be live until June of 2025. There's the uplift, and the uplift comes in two forms. It's an overall 4% for banded rates, and for clients that are on a RAS, it's a split increase, with the accommodation element going up from 412 per week to 424 per week. That's a 2.9% calculation. And the rate for care hours is going up from £15 and 4 pence to £15.76 an hour, and that's a 4.79% increase. And this is against a backdrop where we're seeing national insurance changing quite dramatically for employers, going up from 13.8% to 15%. But what is hidden somewhat in that national insurance change is the threshold, and the threshold falls from £175 and a pence per week to £96 and a pence per week. And all of that will then, so how would I best explain this? So previously, if anybody had an employee earning less than £175 per week, then the employer national insurance was zero. If that same person is paid that, their national insurance element will increase dramatically, because they'll be above the threshold, and the amount above the threshold now will all fall at 15%. So for some part-time workers, that's going to be a really dramatic increase in employment cost. And obviously we have the national minimum wage going up for people age 21 and above going up from £11.44 to £12.21, and that's a 6.7% increase. So I just wanted to sort of give that a little bit of a flavour in terms of the uplift. We've also got service descriptors, a new contract, proposed KPIs. So lots of stuff to get into and talk about there. So, oh gosh, there's notes flying left, right, and centre. But at this point, I will pause and hand over to my friend to lead us through some slides.
Hi everyone, nice to see so many of you on the call during half term. As Robin said, we've tried to put together a bit of a summary of some of the information, hopefully some helpful tips in order to assist members navigate what is clearly going to be a stressful time for many people with these changes. We have consulted with RWK, in particular Hazel Phillips, to try to get the best advice for people on how to protect the position. So whilst this is a proposal and it is still open, fully open for engagement, our understanding from the local authority is that they are open to hearing views and actively are seeking views, especially of the nursing market. So there were only 15 nursing homes that responded to the initial value in care request for information, and the information that's come out from that work appears somewhat skewed. So there is a reported higher cost of residential delivery rather than nursing delivery, resulting in a lower nursing fee than would have been expected. Having said that, if that is the case for the nursing market, there may also be a case for the residential homes of submitting further information to consider the cost base. But on the basis that the cost increase imposed upon the sector by government changes come in April nonetheless, and that this consultation doesn't close until the 23rd of March, that leaves at least a quarter of the year, or 3 months of risk period. So to protect the position, the advice has been to use the existing Devon County Council contract, either under section D8 or D9. We will put these slides onto the WhatsApp group, so I'm not proposing to bore you by reading all of the detail, but suffice to say that there have been template letters for members drafted by RWK to either formally request reviews of needs from the local authority under D8 or to terminate the contract under D9. Termination of the contract being distinct from asking someone to move. By terminating the contract, it gives the local authority 28 days to review, move the individual, or agree a new fee. It gives the ability of the care provider to stipulate the fee from day 29 if the contract is terminated. Those letters have been drafted by RWK, but have not yet been approved by Devon County Council. This slide covers the national insurance change to that Robin has just articulated for us. The advice has been, I apologise for saying this. This is just the advice, not me trying to teach you how to do anything, but to work out your current cost and to work out your future cost, projecting staff pay rates, and that was the intent of the model that was circulated last night on WhatsApp around nursing costs in particular. I'm sure people are aware that the proposal now is to move from an individualized, personalized hours system into a banding system. And that banding system has 5 bands suggested: residential, low, medium and high, nursing, standard and advanced. There is a bespoke pricing system suggested in the proposal, although there is nothing written in that proposal about how a bespoke pricing model may work. And it's our understanding that it's not going to be a set of calculated hours, and it is the bespoke pricing panel will be asking people to articulate needs and describe why they are over and above the service descriptor needs. Hence the call tomorrow, where we're going to try and work through application of those service descriptors. Rob and I have bullied Eve into presenting some information tomorrow because she's already started an application model. So it's still organic, and we are sharing information at this stage just to try and do something collaboratively together. Otherwise, what we find is that each of us go and apply the proposal differently, and the system doesn't have a set manner of working, and we therefore don't get to benefit as a group of care homes working together. So hopefully we'll be able to develop a process through DCHC that works, that we can then adopt as our common process. These slides detail out the steps that we have been discussing with the advisors about what to take. Apologies again if this is obvious to some on the call, but to use the service descriptors to early identify which band your current service users would sit in, and then using your existing staffing model at 2025 or April 2025 rates to assure yourself that your service is financially viable. The reason that I'm really keen that everyone does that particularly is just that I've done that in my own organisation, and the outcome has not been positive. So if that is the case and mapped across the market, then there is a real urgency for us all to come together to represent why that value in care data is incorrect, if it is incorrect. But I can't make those current numbers work at Evolve Care Group. That might be because we employ too many people, or because these numbers don't work. But I'd be keen to share that information for people to make that same assessment. Breaking down of your fee can be considered accommodation costs, care costs, and nursing and health costs. So again, apologies for the residential providers in the market, but there is a real drive here to understand the cost of health delivery as to whether FNC covers that cost. But the principle is the same for everyone. So for residential providers, considering the accommodation cost and the cost of providing those care hours, and then considering whether your current fees or projected fees under the proposed banding system would cover your costs. And if they would not, then we have the opportunity to present that information back through this engagement. There is some detail here for you of accommodation costs and what they should cover. Hopefully this is it's helpful as a summary to have this out, even though the source documentation is what Devon have given you. It's stark to note that the Devon proposed accommodation charge of £424 per week for residential accommodation compares to £579 in the value in care report as the median fee. So the proposed fee does not equate to the median fee from the exercise commissioned by the local authority. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying that's something that we should seek to understand what that means. I did reflect that having read the proposal, I did not fully understand it. And as a chartered accountant, that concerned me. But that is something that we should probably be looking to get some clarity on from the local authority. I cannot understand the rationale for changing away from the median, but adopting median hours in other areas. We're encouraging people to truly understand their cost of delivery. So in the cost of hours, especially any contractual payments. We've heard from members that there are a number of contractual benefits that social care providers provide to their staff that they would not ordinarily capture in a model. That might mean Christmas bonuses, paid sick leave, additional training costs and hours, etc. And because of the way that many social care homes are run, that we do things off the spur of the moment to meet the needs of the people in front of us at the time, and not necessarily calculate that in some kind of formal model. So it does take some thinking to plan out, or to look at the last 12 months, for example, and say, how many hours of training have you actually delivered, and how many external courses have people actually been on, and do you have the skills currently in your home to continue accepting service users a variety of needs in the coming 12 months? And if you don't, are we able to cost out that training and identify what that training is? The proposal is suggesting a 4% inflationary uplift on all costs with fees capped at those rates there. Just want to be clear, sorry, this was all done at the last minute, so I'm just making sure that it makes sense. Fees being capped at 1167 on residential and 1107 on nursing. That means that for those providers that have a fee over and above that on a particular case or service user, there will not be an uplift for that fee. That's probably significant for people to model into their financial plan for next year. A 0% uplift on some cases may prove problematic. In addition, when arguing hours or debating hours under the RAS model, a current fee may be made up of RAS hours plus a market premium, and that the market premiums traditionally have not been uplifted. But therefore, when translating that into a bespoke pricing model, when discussing intensity, frequency, and hours of delivery, there is clearly an in-depth conversation to have case by case. If that is the case, that all of us will be asking for reviews, then the operations department at Devon County Council are going to be extremely busy. On the basis that members tell us that we are already significantly behind on reviews, that leads us to some concern. We are seeking to collect from membership information about the number of reviews or the individuals that have not been reviewed in the past 12 months, because that enables us to calculate that across the system and provide that information back in relation to their staffing levels. If this was to come out in June and we were all to require reviews in July and August during summer, then they will not be staffed to do that. And if they're not staffed to do that, we will all experience delays in our funding plan when we will be experiencing the immediate uplift in cost in April. We have provided for nursing providers an FNC or nurse or health delivery cost template, and provided examples of that completed at 40 bed nursing home and a 50 bed nursing home. For a 40 bed nursing home, even if F&C was provided for 40 beds all year round, the home would be loss making for health income over health costs. A 50 bed home would break even at £1,000. And that's at this year's F&C rates. So we encourage nursing providers to be looking at that template. That provides us with information to feed back to central government about the F&C rate for next year. It also enables us to consider with the market, with the commissioners, the process for applying this funding model. In addition to the rates, the contract does have some significant changes in it, some of which are summarised on this slide. It is to note that if you take a person from hospital and that person is readmitted within the STS period, the funding for that placement will end in 48 hours. So if you have supported someone from hospital where actually the discharge was wrong and they were discharged too early, we're no longer able to keep their bed open because the funding will cease after 48 hours. This did not previously exist. If a resident is absent from the service for 6 weeks, the contract now terminates. If the resident is absent for 3 weeks, then there is a reduction in fee, and a resident who passes away on a fixed term contract will have the funding end on the day of death. So there are some reductions in the contract in the way that it's been worded. Those are the summary points that we've taken from reading the document so far. Clearly, as we have more time, we'll be able to summarize more. The thoughts that we've collated have little impact unless we speak as one voice. So our ask of you on this call is to consider your actions. For yourself and your service, do you need to protect your position? That's something we would encourage you to think about now whilst the current contract is in place. Protecting the position depends upon your approach with your commissioner and your families. A protect position letter under D8 is asking for a review. There is no contractual obligation on the local authority to change the price if they do not agree with your view. Protecting the position by serving notice under D9.2 terminates the contract in 28 days, reverting to standard terms of business. The local authority will say, well, then the person has to leave, and therefore it's the advice is to communicate with the individual's family first, or with themselves if they have capacity. So I always go to families because of the type of individual we support. To communicate with the individual and their family around your intent, and the intent, if it's not for someone to leave, then that should be made clear. So the protect position, communicating with families across the board is probably the right way to go in terms of that advice. There is the opportunity to complete, under the new fee proposal, an opportunity to complete the value and care template again. We don't know that they will look at that information. We do know that for nursing services, there is a requirement to look at that information because it simply doesn't work. Please, we encourage you to calculate your cost base from April using a template to identify all of your staffing and running costs, and consider the average fee you require to meet those costs. To take your current placements and split into the bands and see how many service users you require at each band to cover your costs, and then consider if that is achievable and safe based on your current staffing levels. It's really important that financial safety and clinical safety are both hand in hand, and we would encourage you to be ahead of the game in terms of considering that information. For the service descriptors, and again, we have the call tomorrow to go through the service descriptors in case there are any questions, and to consider how we could apply those in a uniform manner as care providers, so we have a single application method with the local authority. But to apply those descriptors to your service users with your staff team, so that people get used to understanding how to describe an individual's care needs in order that they're accurately reflected and the right banding is used. It is unclear how easy it will be to change from low, medium to high, or standard to advanced, because that's still not articulated in the proposal, on the basis that everyone, us as providers and local authority as care professionals, will be thrown into a new system from July. It's likely that it's going to take some time to bed that in, and so by having done the thinking process on our side of the fence now, we are able to collaborate with them and point out where we may need to change the process to reduce elements of friction. I wanted to show just we're having one of those IT error days with Excel crashing. That's not helpful. I wanted to consider the last point around health funding again with providers. If this makes sense, please tell me if I'm not making sense in the way that I say this. The local authority, it will consider a band between low, medium, high for residential, and if that individual has identified nursing needs, will identify standard or advanced. The wording on standard and advanced is for nursing appears to be the same as medium and high for residential, which indicates that the difference between nursing and standard and advanced is not nursing risk, but actually social care time required to meet the care needs of an individual with advanced nursing risk. If someone is over and above nursing advanced, the first consideration should be, are they over and above FNC? If they are over and above FNC, then the right thing to do is to make a CHC referral, or at least for the checklist to be considered, which must be positive if they are FNC, and then for a CHC assessment to be completed. If CHC is not met, then before considering bespoke pricing with the local authority, under their contract, there should be the option to consider joint funding under the NHS Local Authority Joint Funding Agreement. If joint funding is not met, then bespoke pricing under the local authority contract should be met. Why is that a difference? Because that should mean that the NHS pay more under a joint funding arrangement. So CHC placements are fully covered by NHS funding. Joint funding arrangements are a percentage split, 70-30, 60-40, 50-50. The current Devon joint funding agreement, authored in 2021, states that it's 50-50. That means that there is a further health contribution coming. Why is that important? Because social care have a set finite budget. As nursing providers, if we are identifying nursing needs, health needs that are being met through social care time and charging that to the local authority, that reduces our social care budget as a care community. What should be happening is the NHS should be paying more where there is an increased level of nursing risk met by health staff. So there is a process in place that we used to use quite actively. As with everything during COVID, we changed practices. That joint funding process has not been actively engaged in our county, and this is our opportunity to have that reinstated so that we get the right money from the right area. For nursing providers, that gives us a very clear pathway. Forgive me, I am a nursing provider, so that's the bit that I've been focusing on in terms of my understanding. I do have one residential setting where I discovered that through time and motion analysis, that my residential staff are completing delegated tasks from the community nursing team. Now, if it's delegated from the community nursing team, that means that it's a health task. Residential, low, medium and high funding is social care funding and is not designed to cover the costs of health tasks. So for residential providers, of which I do have one service, if our teams are completing delegated tasks from health, then these banding descriptors do not cover that time. And that's something we may want to consider seriously with the local authority. If delegation is to continue, I understand the benefit of that to the NHS. Are we able to describe the level of delegation taking place in our residential homes? If we are, it gives us the opportunity to aggregate that information, to give it back to the local authority, where they are then able to recharge to the NHS so that we protect our social care budget. By protecting the social care budget, it means individuals can be funded properly for their social care needs, and health needs correctly are met through NHS funding. Why is that important? You will see from central government allocations, the NHS is allocated far more than social care. So the NHS should rightly be paying for all of health delivery costs. I'm not Jeffrey, so I'm not going to pretend to quote any numbers because I'm not as clever. But what I do know is that national funding through the NHS pipelines is a lot greater than our local authority delegation. That's all we have to say today, Robin.
That's all. So we've gone through quite a number of slides at pace there. Huge thanks for Shreen in terms of he and his team putting those together for us. I'd really like to give people on the call an opportunity to voice their thoughts and concerns, so that we can capture those and understand what people are worried about. And instantly, John's got his hand raised.
Yeah. Where do we go? I love the fact that they're not giving us I think all of our residents, near enough all of our residents, are over the 116750. So I must admit, I did reply to Devon County Council in a rather aggressive manner, saying I'm pretty well disgusted with what they've come up with. That's not going to help us at all. It's going to create some real issues. Sorry, I got a bit of background noise. And it will create some issues because staff wages go up, and because we've got the NI increases, and that'll have a major impact. Going through the costing sort of breakdown, there's one or two weird bits and pieces. I don't know if anybody else has any ideas here. So if we've got, say, a residential high, which is 30.12 hours, and we've got residents here that require 70 hours, for example. So the additional 40 hours, are they saying that the additional 40 hours will be paid at the extra hour rate at £19.06 or not? Because if they are, then that's great. But then we have to provide staff rota and a breakdown of costs, which I don't understand what that means. Which will be benchmarked. I don't know what their benchmarking process is against a new fee model. So all of that paragraph seems very woolly to me. And I don't know if anybody else has had thoughts of that.
So, John, I think I agree with you in the way you understand that. For that high level of hours per resident required, that will be at the enhanced rate. Quite as you say, how on earth Devon are going to benchmark that? I don't know, is the honest answer. I would imagine if you have the evidence to demonstrate hours and rota that sits behind it, then I would imagine that they're going to have to be paying you what you can evidence.
We're particularly good at being able to evidence everything. That's what we sort of kind of use all the tech that we possibly can in order to do that, which I think other people, if they're not doing it, I've seen handwritten rotas and all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff, but they're not using the tech that's out there. They're going to have problems.
The way that it was explained, John, was that it's about the description of the need, not about your delivery. So, forgive me if I'm misquoting, but the way that I believe it was explained was, if you had an individual that you believed was over and above the highest band, that it's about describing their needs and why their needs are over and above the descriptors, then applying a cost to that, which is your own cost template, not necessarily £19.06. And then for them to use that set of needs to identify the best value provision in the marketplace, which we're all used to, the best value exercise, where we will be pitted against each other to quote. So my understanding or commercial approach is that when we have someone in one of our homes who we've described the needs as over and above the headline descriptor, and we sharing with each other our methodology for costing the placement. What I've seen happen time and time again in my own service is a local authority Care Act assessment being sent to another home down the road, that person coming in, attempting to assess someone, and that Care Act assessment being holistically, fundamentally, substantially wrong and incomplete. And then on assessment, the assessing provider has had access to the Evolve assessment and the Evolve costing methodology, and then they've been able to then agree or disagree. In the last case that I had, the DCC assessment was 35 hours. My assessment was 65 hours. The new provider's assessment was 70 hours after they had read our information, which filled in the gaps. And I'm very clear that we copy and paste our costing methodology into the running record. So when another provider comes to assess, they've got it as part of that person's medical record, because that is our assessment. And that's been very unpopular. I will say it's caused a number of battles with us, but my attitude remains firm. If the incumbent home can have the Care Act assessment, why can't they have mine? if we are partners and we're equal, you might not agree with the assessment, but they are two views that should be taken into account. But the issue is that we don't work together as a sector with one methodology. And if we did, I think we could protect each other by not being undercut by each other.
Yeah, well, I'm
information.
quite happy to. I think that's a very valid point. And if somebody wants to come round to do assessment, well, we would obviously share the care plan, and the care plan will have quite clearly the hours required to deliver that care. So
but I'm going one step further to say in the running record, there should be an entry where the care provider puts their accommodation charge, their number of hours, the hourly rate, and therefore the total fee. And therefore the incumbent care provider has the ability to say, I'm going to adopt that or undercut it based on the information that I've got. But at the moment, the way that it works is information, we are kept apart and information is not openly shared around a table.
We share it when they come in. When they come in to do an assessment, we do share all that.
Agreed. But if I'd had that information before and I knew that I wouldn't even come in to assess, that's where I'm trying to go if we work together.
I see your point. Yeah. And I think that's really valid. What's really concerning me, though, is going back to, as you say, so now we're in this sort of let's all see who can fight for whomever. I will not go and do an assessment on somebody else if maybe that's the other way of doing it, is just to say I'm not getting into the bidding war myself, and I won't be in the bidding war, and I'm not interested in it.
Thanks, John.
That paragraph, could we focus on that paragraph and get some clarity? I'm not going to be here next week for 2 weeks, and that is just my big concern in that paragraph. I'm appalled already that we don't get any uplift, but anyway.
I think we could take the actions. We could ask people that if you have comments, specific comments like that, please put them into the WhatsApp group so Michaela can collate them in our response. Would that be okay? Yep.
That'd be great. Thanks, John. Can we go to CJ? Apologies, CJ. I don't know your first name.
Hi, it's actual Cyprian, but everyone likes to call me CJ only so they don't get my name wrong. So I'm trying to spare them the embarrassment. I do hope it's a safe place, and I've been looking forward to share my experience ever since I've received this invitation. I am extremely happy that others have lesser issues than I have. Just to summarize a bit, I've been working here for the last 10 years since I've come over to the UK and worked my way up from a care assistant to the owner of a small 24-bedded care home. Took over 9 months ago, and the sole reason for the sale was the previous owners were not involved in any kind of way in the business, and probably within 6 months the place would have shut down because of financial reasons. Nothing got renovated for the last 2 decades. I've been working 10 to 12 hours, 6 to 7 days a week. In the last 9 months, I've made redundant the admin. I've made redundant the registered manager. I've taken on both roles of nominated individual and registered manager. And back in June, when I triggered reviews, I still had residents on 730, 750, 800 pounds a week. I'm still waiting for probably 2 of them, although I was guaranteed the assessments will take place and the fees will be backdated as of the 6th of June. I still have residents to this day, 9 months later, pay 800 pounds a week fee or 730. Don't even know where to address this issue anymore.
Which part of the county are you in?
We're West Devon.
West Devon.
Yes.
So in terms of those reviews, my own suggestion is make sure you've got an email trail requesting each individual review, so effectively it's date stamped, and then I would start escalating it in with your local group for West Devon there, and if you're not getting any response, having escalated it, then please bring it back to the collaborative, and we will escalate it with the Director of Adult Social Services, Tandra Forster at Devon, to try and force some action on that. We've been relatively successful doing that in the past, so that would be my suggestion.
Okay. It's dire, if you ask me, in the care sector now. The sole reason I've taken on the next step after being a registered manager for so many years in owning my own business was because I wanted to give something back to the sector, to everything that I could think of, the older generation as well, to help them. But reaching this point and realizing that you do 3 jobs, nominated individual, registered manager, and maintenance with your maintenance man, to do 20 years of refurbishment in 9 months and to get a cleaner's wages, I don't see a point in working in care anymore.
Yeah, no, I sense that view is shared by lots of people currently.
Yeah,
a lot of pressure. Yeah,
That's really sad to hear, but please don't give up.
yeah.
Yes, it's not been easy, but I've used basically the business account, as a personal one, which means how much money you have in your account, more than happy to spend them all, never thinking of a cash reserve or a rainy day or a profit, just trying to offer the best that we can for the people who are in need the most, still hoping further down the line that you'll have fees reviewed, losing, you know what they say, they all go in freeze, losing 3 residents in a go, being at 85% occupancy and still being on agent historic fees of 700s and 800s, with no luck in you emailing or ringing the local authority for an update that you've been waiting for the last 9 months.
And that's the position that we sought advice on for the use of D92. So the letter that we will send out, if you've tried D8 route asking for reviews, you now have the option of the D9 letter that's signed off by the solicitors.
After waiting for 6 months reviews, it was agreed with the local authority that 23rd of December will be the last day of notice unless they do not operate the fees. It's been 2 months since. And you don't have the courage and the heart in you to give notice to someone that has been here for 6 or 7 years only because
Sure,
just takes that long. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew, you have your hand raised.
Good afternoon. I've got more of a general question to the Devon Care Homes Association. Are you affiliated with Care England, and are you aware of their approach to valuing care?
So not who's going to go first? So not directly affiliated with Care England. Yes, we are aware of their approach.
Okay. And is that an approach that you might share with your members? Because certainly our Solutum's approach is for every commissioner that is writing to us saying that you have to engage with valuing care, we are using their template letter, questioning the confidentiality of the information, because that is the concern that Care England seem to have raised, that valuing care take that information, don't share it back to you as a care provider. They do a calculation, they send it to a commissioner who then comes back and says, no, this is the rate, and there is no transparency. There are obviously a number of different fee calculating models out there. Our experience with all of the others is that they're very happy to have meetings with us to discuss how they've come to their calculations, and in fact some of them willing to see some evidence from us that says the actual cost of providing something is higher than they're putting into their model, and they've made changes. Valuing Care refused to engage. They've just written to me last week saying they're no longer going to respond to my emails, which was clearly very upsetting to me.
So I think the point's very well made, Andrew. We've been, I use the royal we, but we've been pretty disappointed with Valuing Care throughout the exercise. The outset, the intent was they would produce an independent report that would be totally anonymized and would be shared with providers in October 2024. That obviously hasn't happened. in terms of pushing that hard with Devon County Council, it would appear the legal team at DCC have prevented that being released. I have to tread carefully here in terms of they didn't want it to impact on the consultation, and so only shared the executive summary of the report. So we've gone back quoting Devon's original stance around the involvement in valuing care, which was independent, anonymized, and would be shared, and saying, come on, you said you would, where is it? Next step will be a freedom of information request to pull that out. In terms of Care England and the confidentiality, certainly the terms with which I think individual providers supplied the information, they were all on confidential terms. I'm not a legal person, but if they break that confidentiality, then they're up for being sued. That's for sure. So there's aspects certainly that we're very uncomfortable with. Personally, when I've engaged with them, I have struggled to find an explanation from them as to why the return on operations markup is 5%. Question mark, what's the justification? Should it be 5, 10, 15, 20? Where is the justification? I haven't seen or heard anything on that. And then in terms of the return on capital, is in the model is at 5.5% yield. And again, personally, I think there's a complete mismatch between a return on capital perspective from a provider and a yield from effectively a property owning real estate investment trust company. And they haven't grasped that difference there. Hope that helps, Andrew.
No, it does. I just wanted to make sure that your members were aware of it, just so that if you wanted to kind of make use of the Care England model, it's kind of there just as another tool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Have we got any more hands raised? Any more questions that people would like to share? Silence is golden.
So I'll just
Chris.
wait very quickly if nobody else will. Oh, sorry, I can wait. Chris.
I did put it in the chat, but I just wondered, apologies if I've not read the information shared diligently enough, and it is answered, but it wasn't clear to me how the bans would be applied in comparison to the current individual hours calculations.
So my understanding is that the review would be done against the descriptors, and the descriptors would then determine which band the individual fits in, and if it is band 1, 2, or 3, then it's prescribed how many hours are deemed to be for that specification.
So you almost can't compare, essentially, if you had someone today that was on 32. Yeah, understood. All right, brilliant. Thank you.
Beverly?
Hi. Yeah, I put it in chat as well, but just to explain myself, is the inflationary increase that's limited to fees at a certain rate, where it's bespoke placements? So, for instance, we support people of a younger generation who have very complex and high support needs. You're looking at 1-to-1, 24/7 in some instances. Is that inflation increase then not going to happen? Are we to expect 0% for our population?
So I my understanding, having read the documents, is sadly yes, but having flagged this to the commissioners, they are open to suggestions on how that is handled. So I have the feeling it may have been something of an oversight in the way they structured the proposal.
I hope that's the case, because I mean the increase in costs from the increased national insurance for employers, I mean, we worked out it's about £200,000 hit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
and that's
huge.
not including the the changing of rates, which we need to stay above the minimum rate to keep us competitive.
Yeah.
Beverly, whereabouts in the county are you?
We're in Torquay.
So and that your placements are Devon commissioned.
But it's Devon, yes, Devon. We
Yeah,
have
yeah.
quite a few. Well, we have commission placements in Somerset as well from Devon. So we've got Devon County Council and Devon ICB in all the different parts of Devon. So, but we don't have that many people, probably about a dozen spread around. But yeah, they're all on very bespoke fees because of the intensity of needs. So we're very highly staffed, hence the hit with an employer's national insurance, because the example of like a nursing home where you may have, say, a team of 50 staff with 80 beds, we've got a team of 50 staff with 12 beds. So it's a bigger hit on our services than it will be on the care sector for the elderly.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that falls. Sorry.
I guess that's because there's a large number of part-time people who are suddenly being drawn into the employer's national insurance for the first time.
Yeah, and we have people 30 hours plus, really, is the majority. So
yeah. Yeah. So sorry, John, you were going to.
I was probably just going to ramble on, mate.
That's all right. Go for it.
I put a load of stuff on or a few quick notes on the WhatsApp group. So maybe someone will pick it up from there. But yeah, I'm just really concerned by this. And particularly...
So we'll put that up on the group. But would you mind if I just throw out a couple of questions, if people could answer them in the chat bar, please, so that we can start collating our response. So number one, are individuals on the call comfortable and confident in responding to the proposal and how to respond to it? It'd be really helpful if you could just give us a comment in the chat bar about whether you feel comfortable and confident in responding to this engagement. The more answers, the better if possible, so that we know it's representative. If the answer to question 1 is no, could you please write question 2, tell us the reason why? Why do you not feel comfortable or confident to respond to this engagement? What I'm getting there is, how do we help you?
I think it needs if I'm going to be honest, Trent, it needs a single response from all the.
So the way the local authority works is that it'll be on one thing is the quantum of providers that respond is a metric that determines the gravitas of the issue with the market. So in previous fee consultations, DCHC has written a response, and they've come back saying, well, you're the only people that replied, and there were only actually 3 providers across the county that replied. So our strategy will need to be individual responses and a collaborated, jointly produced response countersigned with providers' individual names. The individual responses is where I think we need to help first. We have had the offer of Nicola coming to a DCHC call to engage in how to respond. If people would find that useful, could you please answer that as question 3? Should we invite Nicola Tribble to a specific engagement design meeting? I asked that because when I read this, I didn't understand half of this engagement proposal and was able to get answers answered. And I'm just conscious that other people may. A couple of hands up, sorry. Marta.
Hi, sorry.
Hi.
I think for me is I completed the cost of care for Devon. I've refused to do it again for Torbay. I've been very honest with you because I did not get any feedback from Devon. So I just thought, what's the point? And I know that we had a couple of meetings about the service descriptors and the fact that they were very generic and then we didn't really get much feedback from that point. They stayed as they are, I believe. So for me, it's I'm a bit like throwing in the towel. I'm so busy, you know, I'm the sole British director for the company. I've done the most that I can with the time that I have, and it's just not really come back in any way positively. So I think that's for me why it's kind of no, like I don't want to engage anymore. Just being blandly honest, you know, I say it as it is, as you know.
Yeah, sure. I guess we all feel downhearted, don't we? But we're in that position where if we don't provide any information, then the information that they've got is the information that stands. And that's what's happened in Value in Care, that they received 36 responses, which must have been different to the delivery response. I'm saying that carefully because I didn't respond. And so the numbers that we've now got to work with are wrong. So we have to correct them, don't we?
Without seeing what they've got. You know what I mean? Like I did my Value in Care for the home in Devon and I had, like, I don't know what they've come up with. We have no feedback about it. And I think it was October that we were promised it. So I kind of feel like they, you know, they want us to keep engaged. Well, they need to give us something back, like knowing what the Value in Care said.
Yeah, that's good. Fair point.
And
Chris,
and I think,
sorry,
just before we jump to Chris and Marta, I think that point about the fair cost of care exercise, it will be really beneficial to benchmark what the Valuing in Care exercise has come up with in comparison to that fair cost of care, and do the two align. So that's yet to be done. Sorry, Chris.
No problem. I'm assuming the structure of the suggested response is on the slides. Is that right?
Those slides were thrown together at about 3 o'clock this morning. So please forgive the insomniac type approach to them. I guess the answer is that we don't know. I'm really lucky that I have a whole team of people that can sit and crunch stuff all day long. And then we come into meetings like this, not everyone's got that same privilege. So anything we can do to help and create something. There's a couple of issues, I think, from where I'm sitting. One, there is the absolute matter of the number, the social care cost of low, medium, high. Layer on top the cost of health delivery. Then there is the application of the service descriptors. It's all well and good that we talk about money, but when our operational teams are having a conversation with a social worker, I can just see this going wrong. Badly wrong across the county because the descriptors are so vague. And then I can then see funding delays coming through because it's a new system and therefore cash delays. We already have, I don't know, but you guys, I can share that in Evolve, at one point we had nearly £1 million outstanding from the system. And whilst they've worked to erode that down, I can just see this now coming back up in terms of debt collection. Because it's not gone through on their system. And then when we come to disagreement or lack of agreement, let's say, there doesn't seem to be an escalation pathway or mediation pathway to resolve those cases. And then they just get on the back burner. And then what are we doing about forward planning? So, for example, the hospital discharge rate has been 1,200 or 825 for 4 years. That's really concerning. That doesn't seem to be addressed here. Then we've got the actual contract. Now, the specification is up for engagement. The contract is not. The contract reduces our terms further when you've got days after death and termination of contract at 6 weeks, etc. If you actually calculate that for your service, it's being eroded left, right, and centre. So I think there's quite a lot of work to do together before the 23rd of March.
So sorry, just to clarify, my question was in the sense that I think you asked if everyone was comfortable in responding.
Yeah.
So I guess as of now, off the top of my head, probably no, but I'm fully confident that, you know, given hence the question about, you know, is it sort of bullet pointed on the first slide or two, what you suggest we go back with. But the reason I was asking that question, I think, is there an argument that most of these responses could be generic? I mean, I suspect everyone here agrees that, you know, there are 10 significant problems and everyone would very quickly say yes, 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 yes. You know, is it worth us as a collective agreeing a generic response and calling out a couple of areas which are individualized and almost spoon feeding everyone with, you know, the right type of points to make? Because, you know, some of them, and I'm certainly in this category, aren't as mature and as good, I guess, at digesting all this as some others. Just think that might be a really good idea. And then I've got a probably far over the horizon question. Even if we get a really good response back to them, given their track record in actually listening to us as a group, do we need to at some point start discussing what our collective action can be to almost force some kind of positive response? Because whilst last year, I think if memory serves me right, the minimum wage versus the uplift they gave us, you know, there was quite a big delta there, which we obviously all took the hit on. I, for one, am not particularly keen to just swallow it again based on their terms. But as I think Trian, you've called out a number of times, you know, one voice calling isn't as powerful, is it, as a group? What can we do to come together to try and, you know, make it clear to them that they're not going to be able to pick us off one by one?
So
Sorry, that was about several questions in one.
No, that's great, Chris. So absolutely, as the sort of care association, we'll be providing our thoughts out to everybody, so that you can take, if we call it the top 10, and feed that in your own words to commissioners. In terms of one of the other points you raised, and
just on that note, Robin, sorry to interject.
That's all right.
But I almost, in a way, I think that if it was obvious that this is the same from everyone, it almost delivers a subtle message that we're all on the same page and you're not going to divide and conquer here. Just a point.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure the commissioners are aware that we're having this meeting talking about a collective response, and as Shireen described, we'll be doing a response on behalf of the collaborative, but also asking everybody to sign that response as well, for impact. But you just to finish, and then I'll be quiet. Sorry. You rightly flagged how can we sort of take this to the next level, and Jeffrey's put in the chat bar there the reference to the recent judicial review with Stoke, and so I think there's a high level of sensitivity with the commissioners at the moment around escalating action on these annual reviews at the moment. So I would anticipate this year, with the backdrop of Stoke, a lot more attention will be paid to the points raised, and commissioners will not want to expose themselves in the way Stoke did in the way in which they handled their annual process. Sorry, thank you.
That's right. Do you mind if we just set some foundational pillars, if you like, as to how we move forward? That number one, I think Nicola's been really clear from day one in every meeting that I've been in that they will use the information as is in front of them, and I think the argument that they haven't edited the value and care report in terms of the summary they provided is evidence that that still holds true. So pillar one is to provide the information objectively that challenges the local authority's proposal, and they have been pretty clear in the last week that they will listen to that information. I'm not saying that they will change anything or agree with it, but at least that's the collaborative approach. Pillar 2 was the protection of the position, which is why we started with RWK's notice letters on the current contract. Now, I have a very firm view in terms of contract law here that this is a contractual notice position, doesn't mean that the person has to move, but the contract doesn't meet for the resources of the identified needs. But is that a modus operandi for us as a set of providers, which leads me to Pillar 3, which is the commonality of approach, which I alluded to earlier on about us sharing our pricing model when there is a care home to care home move. To me, care home to care home moves tend to fall in two categories. One, where there is an escalation in need, i.e. residential to nursing, or behavioural need, where that service can no longer meet need. And I think we're all happy to say that person should leave our home where we can't meet their needs and go to a home that can. And it happens to all of us, and it's the nature of service user flow. But the second is where the service user is being set out to tender in the market, where they're looking for better value care. And that's where there's the opportunity to work together to share information. And if that price is undercut because John's got better curtains than me, for example, and there's a higher accommodation, right? I know lots about his curtains, by the way. So that he's got better environments than something I have, and it's more expensive, then it's okay to undercut because there is a lower quality environment, if you like. But actually, if we're undercutting on care, isn't that where we should work together? And is that something that we come together as members so that people in our sector remain protected? Because ultimately, that's why we're here. So that was going to be our approach to putting stuff out there. I'm not happy to take away the template point. There is that issue that we all have our day jobs, so I wouldn't want to commit here that we can write a template and then not deliver for you.
You are right. You have rubbish curtains.
Sometimes I just have blinds, mate, not even curtains. It's like, yeah, they get ripped out. Well, I hope that was helpful.
So if we've got no further questions, I suggest we pause the call here. We've lined up a call at the same time tomorrow to start to get into the nitty-gritty of the service descriptors and the impact that will have and the understanding of it. But thank you everybody for attending today and the input and the comments, really appreciated. So take care, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Thanks, Robin.
Yes.